Hello my bookworms, welcome back to my channel. My name is Sydney, and today's video we are going over all of the books that I read in the month of August, better known as my August wrap-up. So hey, welcome back. Thank you so much for being here and hanging out with me for a little bit. I've been really sick this whole past week. I'm finally feeling better today, so apologies for this video being a little tad smidgen late, but I thought I was dying. My reading month in August was a little bit messy. Definitely went off my scheduled TBR. Definitely didn't read all the books that I was supposed to read, but I did read some good ones. So right off the bat, I still sound sick, don't I? Right off the bat, let us go into the one that surprised me the most, okay? Let's start off with Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This was a book that was on my, soft anti-TBR list. I never thought that I would read this book, and then I read it, and I loved it. I thought that it was really good. I did have the audiobook alongside reading it with my eyeballs, and it was definitely the right move. All the narrators did such a great job, and I will say it again in this video, but the way that Taylor Jenkins Reid writes her, interpersonal relationships is just top notch. I really love her writing and her storytelling, all of the side stories and the backstories, and it's just really exquisitely done. I really, really love her now. I am a Taylor Jenkins Reid stan, and I will stand by all of her books. But yeah, I gave it a 5 out of 5. The next book, let's just keep that train rolling because there's not much more I could say about it than what you already heard, but I also read Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and this was another one that was fantastic. Again, she writes relationships really well. Her character backstories, the little scenes that she writes about even her side characters just make you really love or feel very strongly about every single character that she writes. And just the whole story within this book, it was very compelling, very interesting, really wanted to keep going. I really had a hard time putting it down at some points. And again, it was just beautifully written, and I gave this one also 5 out of 5. Okay, let's switch up gears a little bit. My dust jacket for this one is downstairs, but I did also read The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Johnson. This was the book club pick for my book club this past month. And out of however many there are of us in my book club, there was maybe 20% that really loved it. And I am in the indifferent part of that percentage. So in The Space Between Worlds, it's a sci-fi that has interplanetary travel, and it has the multi-dimension theory, where there are 100 whatever of me doing this same exact thing right now, but it is slightly different because those other versions of me are making different decisions, and so on and so forth. And in this story, our main character, she is dead in all of the worlds except 5 or 8 of them or something like that. And because of that reason, she has the ability to travel in between the worlds and visit the worlds where she is dead. And one of her selves were murdered, and she's trying to figure out why, what's going on within the politics between the worlds, and that type of thing. And it was good. It was kind of confusing, and it just felt a little underwhelming for me. And I will say that I was never really bored while reading it. I was never looking ahead and seeing how much longer I had to go in the chapter, but I was never super stoked about it either. There were some pretty lines, there were some good quotes every now and then that I did enjoy, as well as some scenes that were, exciting, but overall, my experience was just okay. And that was the same experience a lot of my patrons had. We ended up deciding to not even do a live show on it because not a lot of us had very much to say about it. And I know some people really do love this book, and I can see why. It just was a little bit underwhelming for me, personally. I think I gave it a 3 or a 3.5 out of 5. The next book I read was Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn. This was obviously not on my scheduled TBR, but I read it during the 1,000 during the 1,000 Doors readathon. And this one is about our main character, who is a reporter. She is coming out of a brief stay in a psych hospital, and she has to go back to her hometown to report on these recent murders of these young girls. And they're pretty brutal. Our main character is very troubled, mentally ill, struggles with self-harm, and just like a toxic home life. It was difficult to read at some points. And she's basically just trying to figure out like what's going on with these girls, why did they go missing, who took them, who killed them, so on and so forth. And it's, you know, coming back to your hometown, dealing with your toxic surroundings. This one I did enjoy. It was a fast-paced book. I read it in one day. Kind of had to because it was the readathon, but I think that I have watched so much like Criminal Minds and SVU that like I have a pretty good basis of what to theorize for my thrillers of this nature. So like I kind of had an idea of like what was going on. So the main, well, there were two big plot twists towards the end. The first one I saw coming. I definitely guessed that one pretty early in the book, but then the second one got me. Definitely, it was a surprise. All in all, I really thought that Gillian Flynn wrote this book really well, really had a very sinister kind of uneasy undertone throughout the whole book. Like you weren't really sure exactly what was going on or who to trust. And I ended up giving it like a 4 out of 5, maybe a 3.75 or something like that out of 5. The next one that I read, I am entirely in love with. It is Saga Volume 1 by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. If you've seen my September TBR, you already know that I am reading the second and the third volume already this month. I just think that this graphic novel was one of the best ones it is the best one that I've ever read. I'm not a big graphic novel buff or anything like that, but I can just easily tell that this is just so well thought out. It's so easy to follow, and the characters are just like beautiful and troubled, and they're basically just trying to, you know, navigate through this crazy world that they're living in. They're technically on opposite sides of this like interplanetary war going on. They meet, they fall in love, they end up having a kid. And then this is them trying to like stay alive in the aftermath of everything that's going on. There are assassins trying to come out and assassinate them, and it's crazy. It's a wild ride. It's really, really beautiful, and I am very excited to continue the series. I gave this a 5 out of 5. And the next book that I read was Plain Bad Heroines by Emily N. Dansforth. This one was the buddy read pick for my Patreon this past month. I have a lot of tabs in this one. I had a really good time reading this book. It is for sure, I will say it up front, it is definitely like a slow burn. I think it's marketed as like a horror book because I'm pretty sure it was in Goodreads choices for horror of last year. I don't think that it's a horror book. I think that it is maybe a gothic horror, you know, like there wasn't anything that like scared me or made me like lose sleep, but throughout this whole book there is for sure an eerie, very atmospheric undertone of like unsettled and just something's watching you, something is going to happen any moment, you know, it's just like a weird thing going on, and I really loved it. I thought that it was really good. I think that Emily's writing is stellar. I loved that this book has footnotes. I think that it just, you know, added to the experience of having to go down to the bottom and see her little elaboration on what is going on in the story to give you a little bit more insight. And the book itself, like the pages, they're just absolutely stunning. Like there are parts that have like pictures, and at the top of every chapter there's like a really pretty flower on it with like the angel's trumpet, I think is what it's called, and it's so pretty. It's a stunning book, but it is long. So I mean, if you're not prepared to like spend time with these characters and really just like let yourself go while reading it, it's definitely, I could see how some people would think that it's kind of a slog. I don't know if that's the correct word, but kind of like a drag, you know? I could see that, but I personally just really loved it, and I really loved my experience while reading it. And all the characters were just so raw and very relatable, in my opinion. So I ended up giving this, I'm pretty sure, a 5 out of 5. If not, the lowest I would go is a 4.5 out of 5. Like, I definitely really had a great time with this one. The next book that I read, I haven't finished it yet, but I'm gonna talk about it here. because I plan on finishing it sometime, but I'm just waiting for my hold on it on my Libby app to come back to me because it expired. But I read a little bit more than half of Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton. It's her memoir, and it's basically just about growing up, growing older, and learning to navigate friendship, jobs, loss, and romance. And so far, I've really enjoyed it. I think that it's difficult for me to, you know, give like criticisms on someone's memoir, you know, like it's not about me. It's not about how I feel about it, but it is entertaining. It is insightful at some points. And the narrator is Dolly Alderton herself, so it's really nice to hear her physically, you know, express the story how she wants it to be told. And I've enjoyed it so far. I haven't finished it, like I said. There's a lot of like British culture in here, so I'm obviously an American. I live in America, so some of it is going over my head just a little bit, but ultimately it is entertaining, and I do plan on finishing it at some point. The last book that I read in the month of August is one that I can't really talk about too much because it is in a secret vlog that will come out probably in this next month, but I did read Red Rising by Pierce Brown, and I'm not going to tell you what I thought of it, but I will tell you that I got Caleb to read it last month, and he has already finished Red Rising, Golden Sun, and Morning Star, and he's already on that 4th book. So if that tells you something, Caleb's really enjoying it. So I can tell you that much. But I think that that's all I have for you today. I know that this video is kind of short and not like my usual wrap-ups, I don't think. I think I talk a little bit more normally, but I am still getting over some nose head things, so I do appreciate you being here though and hanging out with me for just a little bit. If you are still watching, then leave the bee emoji down below in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe, like the video. I always appreciate your support, and of course, be kind to one another and happy reading. Bye.